talking about the rumbling seats. That's probably where the rumble packs came from for the game controllers for consoles.
It's true. We got to thank them for that, because I love those.
It was a really big deal when it first launched. I think it's something we've all gotten used to so much, a lot of us don't even pay attention to it anymore. Back in the day, it was such a big deal, a lot of games would actually put a lot of effort in finding new ways of using it. Metal Gear Solid, which is arguably one of those top 20 immersive games of all time, actually would go out of their way to find new uses for it, like when Snake gets the massage for one, and you're supposed to actually use it on your back. And then they flip on the rumble pack at full speed, so it goes brrrr.
Wow.
Well, the first time I ever felt the rumble pack was for GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. And it was in a Best Buy. They had all of those TVs. Like, the Best Buys used to have a TV that was connected to a TV that was connected to a TV. They had, like, a giant TV center, so maybe 20 TVs or so made up one screen.
I remember that. That was awesome.
Yeah, they used to debut the newest, big video game there for that. And that's what those TVs were up. So you had one at your level, but those were also up to draw interest from the other customers in the store. They had GoldenEye on it one day, and I actually got a chance to play it, which is rare because most people would crowd around that thing and not leave. But I had a chance to play it, and the rumble pack was so new that by the time I was done playing, I would walk away from it and I could still feel the vibration because it was such a new thing to have that going on.
Well, each time you fired that trigger, your controller would do that little shake, so it was like you felt the recoil of it.
Yeah, and nowadays though, you play a video game with a vibration function. Half the time somebody would ask me whether the game has a rumble pack or not. I'm like, I don't know, dude, I didn't notice. It's just not something I pay attention to anymore because I'm so used to it. It got overused, and at some point it became less immersive because of that. You just don't notice it anymore.
It's kind of like breathing. You don't even notice because you're used to it. I think that if it didn't rumble for a while and it started rumbling, you'd probably start noticing it, but maybe not. Maybe. I actually dropped the controller the first time one rumbled because I didn't know it was going to rumble, and it startled me. And I was just like, what the hell was that? I thought that somebody was, shaking the controller or something. Of course, I think I was stupid and 11 at the time, so it was just really whoa!
And that vibration has become such a normal part of your life, though, if not from a controller, then from your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
All cell phones have that rumbling, so I don't know that not playing a game with the rumble on for 6 months or a year or whatever, and then suddenly turning it on, I don't necessarily know that would make a big enough difference, because you would be used to it from other things in your life, so...
Let's go into a lot more, some games that are crazy immersive, like the Elder Scrolls series.
Oh, yes.
You can go even to the Fallout series. And before they were taken over by Bethesda, when they used to be Obsidian. Just games that really drag you in. Thousands of hours. And then we can mention the MMOs, too. The MMOs really can do it to an amazing level at times.
There's an imbalance when it comes to the immersion there, though, because it becomes about the numbers and the gear and the raids and
the fact that you're paying money and that you...
that, too. A lot of people don't even pay attention to that. Well, maybe a little more so nowadays. There's not too many subscription games left.
Well, like you mentioned, the gear and the numbers thing, and that's part of the thing that breaks the immersion completely.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through, since I'm level capped on a completely new character that's never done anything, I've actually gone through some of the older content that I didn't do on this character because they weren't around back then, and paid attention. I had the sound on and the music on, and paid attention to the environment, and I was actually kind of surprised at some of the detail that went in there, that because you were trying to get that gear, you just never notice. So
that's true. The first area for the humans, that little town, Golden or whatever.
Or Abbey.
I was so busy doing quests on that time that I didn't really look at everything. And then later on, when I was bored and just jumping around like an idiot and stuff, because I was level 15, dueling with random people, you'd actually start looking around like, this is a really cool area.
When Mists of Pandaria came out, they really worked on the graphics. And I know I've said this before. The trees, the water, the landscape, it's not just copy and pasted like it normally is. You can tell if you go back into the old world and you turn your camera to where it faces the ground, you can see where the tile begins and ends. So it's really, really easy to tell. And that part, when you start paying attention to that, you kind of have to block that out for it to feel immersive. But in Pandaria, it's not like that. Like, it was designed with the intention of being immersive because, honestly, I think that the Pandaren race is one of the development team's absolute favorite lore races in the game, period. And I know that they've said that they wanted them in the game since they first talked about making the game. So that kind of leads credence to that. But the biggest offender is when they use 2D sprites as part of the background. They do it on Gear a lot. No matter what way you turn, you're always looking at the exact same reference point.
A lot of that is simply because there's so much going on a screen that they have to make some shortcuts. Even if it's not going on at the screen currently, you get a bunch of players in one section with a bunch of enemies and you're all fighting and particle effects and everything. It's going to take its toll on anybody's system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And clipping comes into that as well.
Mm-hmm. That's an issue in the Elder Scrolls too. Even in Skyrim, you see clipping issues. I mean, they've tried really hard, but it's just such a massive world. It just, it boggles me, and probably the same for the MMOs too, that there's just so much stuff that they can't possibly make it all look perfect.
And usually the bigger the game is, the more glitches there's going to be, simply because there's so much that needs to be bug tested. And when you have these great big landscapes that are in games like WoW and Skyrim, you can't test every single inch for every single eventuality until it actually gets into the hands of the public.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And plus there's areas they literally didn't intend you to ever get there in the first place. How many times is that you've been playing a game and you've mastered it and you just go roam around. You see an area and you want to get to it, but you can't. And you sit there and keep trying, and so you find a way to get up there or get down there or get where they don't want you to be. And you're like, this looks like crap, and you weren't supposed to be there.
It's for speedrun exploits.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the clipping that we were talking about and how it's in games like WoW and in games like Skyrim, I think it's because there's so much different armor and so many different character models that you can, or even, sizes of character models. It would be too much of an undertaking because you don't see it as much where you're playing a game that your character is static, always wearing the same thing, or the cloak is always there or whatever. You don't actually see it clip like you do in those kinds of games.
I don't know. I still see clipping in just about every kind of game, simply because of the character models in motion, especially motions that they weren't originally quite intending the character to be motioned into. It's like a war game where their guns are going to be clipping through walls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When gaming engines become so powerful, and that includes the hardware that's running it, becomes so powerful that everything has an absolute physic, so that every piece of cloth that's free hanging like a lot of skirts and capes and stuff will actually hit a solid object instead of passing straight through. When those days are here, all that clipping stuff is going to go away. But in the meantime, it does break the immersion, but I don't think it's as much of a break as if pop-in, that's a major problem. When you're walking along and then all of a sudden here's a forest, here's a cityscape, poof, there it is.
Poof.
Now, it used to be a lot worse. It's continuing to get better. The amount of differences that have gone from pre-PS2 days to today is ridiculous. There's a reason Silent Hill was covered in fog originally.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now we have these games like Skyrim where you can sit on a vista and see all the way to the other mountains on the other side and all the towns in between, depending on your PC engine.
Yeah, depending on how strong your PC is.
Something else I've noticed a lot in people trying to make games more immersive is the removing of HUDs in video games.
Yes.
No more ammo counters, no more life meters, and if they do have them, they'll try to outfit it somewhere on the character, whether you're in a first-person shooter and your ammo count is listed in digital numbers on your gun, or like Dead Space with Isaac got his health bar at his backside there.
And his energy bar was in the same spot, like on his shoulder or something.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that's a good idea?
Yes.
I have nothing against removing the jumble of a video game screen, but I don't know, sometimes if you take too much off of it, it's like removing the map or a compass or something that's rather important to a lot of games. I don't know, I think most people would leave it up.
Though, are you referring to the holding the buttons so that you can tell where you're supposed to go in Dead Space?
Not so much that. I think that's part of that immersive thing.
That's what I was going to
As it even tries to have an in-game reason for it. You're seeing his HUD show you the way, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. They actually tell you that they say this: if you get lost, just do this. It's not just something that pops up randomly and tells you what to do. That can be a little bit immersion breaking too, but that's usually only at the start of a game.
Yeah, there's a lot of games that have tried to be really creative about getting around their tutorials without outright telling you this button does this.
Yeah.
Because I remember some of the earlier stuff, like Tomb Raider, where she basically says,
I don't actually run everywhere. When I want to be careful, I walk.
To your question, I think it's a good idea to start taking some of that away. I'm in favor of putting the ammo count on the gun, as long as you can do it reasonably. I liked Dead Space's approach to the health bar. I'm not as big a fan of, what do you say?
Are you talking about when you're getting beaten the crap out of in a first-person shooter, it keeps getting redder and redder with the blood and all that?
Yeah, because it makes it hard to see, which can be part of the gameplay. I can see that being part of the gameplay, but a lot of times what they try to do is overcomplicate it. If like the blood spatter or whatever comes from the right, then you know you're being shot at from the right. If it's from the left, you're being shot at from the left. There's not enough detail to that. It's like, okay, turn left. But sometimes the person shooting you can be right in front of you, and maybe you just missed him, and his bullet just hit on your left side, and the game will register that as you being shot from the left. So you start to turn left, and you may miss him because he was in front of you the whole time, and you didn't see him the first time.
That would be part of the immersion, because it's only indicating where you're getting hit at, not where you're getting shot from.
That's true.
That's where the ears come in, listening for where the bullets are coming.
But that doesn't work if you don't have a nice headset or a nice surround sound system, and not everybody does. I typically don't play with earphones unless it's at night and there are other people sleeping. Games like that, though, I found that I really need to, because of the way the system is built. You're expected to know from sound where it's coming from.
Well, the size of your TV screen and the high definition audio, whether it's earphones or a speaker system, that stuff becomes just as important as the controller you're playing on.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because I wear glasses. I sincerely doubt it. But I have a hard time seeing things in most of your modern first-person shooters. Like, I'll be watching somebody play Call of Duty. I'm just going to throw that one out there because it's one of the games that I actually own. I'll be watching somebody play Call of Duty, and they'll pick out people to shoot before I even know that person's there. And I'm like, how the heck did you see that guy? Because he blends into the background. And then I'll play, and people that can do that will kill me every time because I can't see them as easily. I'm so used to having some kind of, I don't know how to explain it, like most enemies in games have a certain color to them, or when you start blending it into the background, it becomes a lot more difficult for me to notice. That's why people that can see through that and pick people off like that's impressive to me, because I can't really do that. I actually have to sit and stare for a long time.
I think I'm kind of like that too, where I don't even go by color when I'm playing games. I go by movement. So if I'll just sit there and watch. The moment I see something move, I can get ready and start aiming.
Well, that's a good point, but so many modern games have moving objects in the background that aren't necessarily things that you'll be shooting at. So I understand this when I'm playing, and so I think that's part of the problem, is because I don't play competitive first-person shooters very often.
Neither do I.
At all. Yeah, because I'm not good enough at that kind of game to be competitive, and I only get frustrated and annoyed with how easily it is for other people to kill me.
It comes with the practice. The more you get used to it, the more you start realizing what you're watching for.
Yeah,
because those same players who have eagle eyes on that, you turn around and on WoW, they may not see something that you would see right off, simply because you're so familiar with how the game operates.
Well, I get that a lot when I play Smash Brothers too. I understand my invincibility window during a roll. I understand my shield length. I understand all that stuff. I understand the way the system works, so I can play at a really competitive level on that game. But you put me in front of Call of Duty against people that have been playing for as long as it's been out, and I'll get stomped every time. Every time.
Well, since we're off tangent, I'm going to try to use this conversation to squeeze us back on. Do you think multiplayer games can take away from the immersion?
Yes, but I think they can also add to it.
That's true too.
It just depends on how they do it. Games that are built for you to have two people going through the area, Gears of War is the biggest one that I can think of. If you're not playing it with somebody sitting next to you, but over Xbox Live, so you're using the voice chat or whatever, that can make it more immersive.
Unless there's an 11-year-old talking on the mic.
Well, typically, when I play a cooperative game like that, I don't play with people I don't know. I make exceptions for World of Warcraft because it's just a game that I can do that with. Yeah, there's so many people there. Friend or bust. I also find that if they're right in the room with you, then when you talk to each other, the fact that you're being drawn back out of the game to what's around you can be breaking as far as immersion, feeling like you're actually doing what you're doing.
And I think that's why a lot of games tried to have in-game commands instead of voice chat. Counter-Strike did it. I'm pretty sure Left 4 Dead doesn't. And the Resident Evil Outbreak that we were talking about, that was the only way to communicate, was very limited set of voice commands. So do you think that was a bad move, despite it using the in-game characters to make it feel like you're more playing with those characters than another person? I can see the plus side to that, but at the same time,
I don't know. I didn't play that game. Tribes Ascend has some pre-programmed chat features in it, so you can just yell things out at the beginning, so you can instantly alert other players on your team to things going on around you that they need to be alerted about. Like if you have an enemy flag carrier in your base or whatever, there's an actual pretext for that, so you just hit the button and everybody instantly knows. You don't have to sit there and type it out. Meanwhile, this guy's going through your base wrecking it to pieces. It's just a one-button press, then you can go back to trying to find him and kill him or whatever. That, I think, is a good idea, but at the same time, it's a bad idea because people will often just sit there and spam nonsense to be annoying. So
you can fix the game, you can't fix players.
Exactly.
That's true.
It depends on the community. So it's one of those things. It's good, but it's bad, and it's always going to be that way. There's never going to be this is 100% good. This is the thing we need to do. It's foolproof. There's never going to be anything like that because
it's like MMO operators would love to see more role-playing servers because generally those guys not only put a lot of time into what they do, they put a lot of thought in what they do. And I think that's why some of the more immersive games like Star Wars The Old Republic and the recent The Secret World are having the success they're having is largely because of those role-play servers. There's a lot of people getting together, playing out the characters, rather than worrying about what gear they're getting, what roles they're playing, etc. They're trying to build a story and making it their own immersive experience instead of just playing the game for the grind.
I've had experience on role-playing servers with World of Warcraft. Again, I don't know if it's just the community, but it's scary.
Oh, it can definitely vary a lot.
I've heard stories. I've seen the stories come into play. Like, this didn't happen to me personally, but I was talking to a friend a long time ago when I first started playing the game. And he was on a roleplay server. In the Alliance area, there's a place called Dead Mines, and you're basically in an underground cave where people, mine, basically. It's a mine. So the area is supposed to be, kind of hot, but the tank kept complaining about how he was getting hot, and he would randomly start removing pieces of his armor to, quote, cool down. And of course, because he was taking off gear, he was getting hit harder. So at one point, the guy just had to give up and be like, this roleplay server isn't for me because people are retarded. So, yeah, I didn't believe the story when he told me this. I was like, this guy is making this up. There is no way people are that dumb.
Yes.
So
people do all sorts of stuff on those things.
And I found that out. I don't know. I like the lore for World of Warcraft, so I thought it would be interesting, but the community I'm sure there are good communities out there, but the ones that I find, for whatever reason, are always crazy and strange. So I just don't deal with it. I play the normal game, and that's it.
Well, that's not necessarily the game's fault for the crazy people on the internet.
That's true. It's got me in a predisposition notion to not go to a roleplay server for any MMO, especially because I can't be myself. That's the other thing about that. They create rules where you can't talk about your real life or whatever because you can be reported because it's breaking the immersion for the people around you. And I don't know.
Well, we've already talked about controllers a little bit, and we've talked about audio, like the earphones. And so here's probably we're actually running kind of low on time, so this probably will be our last conversation piece, but it's a big one, and it's one that's been really, really popular in recent years. All I have to do is say Avatar, and I think you guys already know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah.
3D. Now, 3D is not new at all in video games. The old Vectrex stuff, Rad Racer had a 3D button. You press select, you put on some 3D glasses.
And it was gnarly.
Yeah. What was that, 1987, 86? So it's not new, but the technology has changed over the years. So now we have TVs, specialized 3D graphics processors now, and the games that take use of them. And the 3DS is famous for not even needing the glasses. The 3D is right there, good or bad, because it is a handheld system, and that can be a problem. But it is also part part of its charm because the ability to move the screen yourself is part of what makes a lot of those games work. They try to take advantage of those. So do you guys think this whole 3D craze is just that? It's just a temporary gimmick? Or do you think this is kind of the start of, I don't know, virtual reality?
I think it's a fad.
I consider it a gimmick personally. It doesn't really add anything to the gameplay for me, but I don't think it's going anywhere.
No, I don't. It's not going anywhere. I do believe that it might be the evolution of some virtual reality aspects, especially with that Kickstarter virtual reality helmet they're coming out with. Mm-hmm. That's beginning of something new. If that goes through and doesn't turn to vaporware, which I'll be very sad if it does.
There's been attempts at holographic games before too, whether it's been using water or light or air. Most of them are arcade games, of course.
Nintendo's horrible failure of a virtual reality attempt.
I don't know if I'd call that virtual reality. It was more like a attempt at 3D.
My eyes still hurt when I think of that.
But it was also a silly idea on the basis alone. Basically a helmet or a gigantic goggle thing put over your face, and it's a portable system. They marketed it as intended replacement for the Game Boy. Seriously.
If it had color and had a strap on that I can put it on my head and just, sit there and wear it.
It was way too heavy. Yeah, it was way too heavy. Even for a strap on, it wouldn't stay.
Yeah, that's true. You know what I usually did? And I actually built a little strap for my Virtual Boy. I usually lay down in bed and then put it on top and then sat there and played like that. But I still have to take it off every 10 minutes before my eyes can get rid of the red that I started seeing everywhere.
For red eyes, clear eyes is genius.
It never bothered my eyes or gave me headaches like I heard it do for other people. If anything, it was because of the way that I was playing. My shoulders would end up kind of pinched up around my head. So I would have to readjust every while and take a break just because of that. But as far as eye strain, I never had that issue.
I haven't had it with a 3DS. I played that. The Virtual Boy gave me severe vertigo sometimes. I would take the helmet off and the room would be spinning and I'd have to sit there for like 5 minutes for it to go away.
It was not a healthy system. No. But since we're kind of mentioning it, the 3DS actually came with a stand for the Kid Icarus game recently.
Yes.
It breaks the immersion simply because you have to hold this game steady now. Because of the way your fingers are doing pretzels to make sure all of the buttons that you need are being pressed. And complicated button presses can take a lot out of the game.
Yes, it can.
I didn't like the ground segment in that game. I hated it.
For that reason?
The controls were crap. I don't like walking around on the ground and having to use the stylus to turn my character. That doesn't work for me. So that was completely immersion breaking. I fought with the controls. You can move forward and backward with the control stick, and left and right with the control stick is strafing. I understand that. That's all fine and good. But I do not like using the stylus to turn my character. If I had been able to turn my character with the L and R buttons, like in Mega Man Legends, that would have been less breaking for me. I ended up quitting that game because of the control problems. It was a fun game. I played it a lot, but it became more of a chore trying to fight the controls than the game was worth playing to me. So, and I hate saying that because it's a good game.
Anytime you're fighting the controls can hurt a game, and not just for the immersive quality, but now I realize I'm one of the few, but the Nintendo 64 controller was such an awkward mess, because the way you had to hold it was actually kind of diagonally, and I never got used to that, so I'd always kind of hold it, you know how it's got the two main handles, and then the third handle down the center where the analog stick is. Well, the analog is usually what you're using on most every game, and so when you're holding it by those, I have a natural tendency to want to turn that toward me straight. So when it feels like you should be pushing up, you're actually pushing up and back. And that has destroyed so many games for me. Now, Super Mario 64 or something like that, that's not such a big deal. You can get used to it. But Smash Brothers? I have ruined so many good games of Smash Brothers doing that kind of thing.
I just got used to it and eventually changed what up was for me. I liked the N64 controller a lot. I thought it was a pretty good evolution. I didn't really have the joystick issue I learned to do and ruin everything else. I just pressed up and my hand was tilted, so it actually did go up.
Nintendo's always gone for kind of the weird looking controllers ever since they left the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it's a shame because
they're getting weirder.
I really like the Super Nintendo controller.
I'll give them that. They're innovative. They've always done something new with all of their controllers. They've not sat on their laurels and said, this is a great, solid, basic design. That's going to be enough for us. And I'm not taking pot shots at Microsoft and Sony for doing that, because usually their controllers are better for it. But as far as innovation's concerned, usually Nintendo's the one putting it out there first if a third party hasn't done it prior.
It's mostly...
I couldn't stand the Xbox controller. I hated that controller passionately.
I like it for first-person shooters, and and platforming games. I absolutely hate it for fighting games. I just cannot get it to work for me. I'll end up jumping when I'm trying to move forward.
The Dreamcast had a bit of clunkiness to it in that same way. It made fighting games on it hard, which is weird because there was a lot of fighting games for that system. Before I go on a ramble about fighting games. Because we don't need 30 minutes of me talking about fighting games. We'll save that for sure. Well, we've certainly gotten really close to our time. I'm not sure exactly where we're at. We've had a few unexpected things happen during our recording that's kind of offset our timer. But I imagine we're still a good 45, 50-minute show at the very least. What we're probably going to do, since this is going this way, is go ahead and continue this discussion next week for a part 2 on immersion, which is going to be kind of awkward to probably title these. Episode 9, Part 1, Immersion, Part 1. But we'll figure out something. This will be the new Immersion. Next week will be the Immersion Strikes Back. And finally, Return to the Immersion.
I was waiting for it.
But that being said, it seems like I say that every time we're about to end that show. End that show. End this show. That show. This show. Every show. Well, McDonald had a show. So I guess this is Part 1 of Immersion for our PrinnyCast of November 3rd, 2012. You can catch us on Twitter at PrinnyCast. That's the little @ at PrinnyCast, because you can't see my hands. I'm showing you my hands. You cannot see them because the power of the internet is not yet that fantastic. Actually, it is. I just don't have a working camera. Okay. And our email is PrinnyCast@gmail.com. So if you have anything that you can't comment for some strange, bizarre, unexplainable reason that's almost paranormal, but you can't put it down here in the bottom where the comments are. See, I'm pointing. You can't see my hands. This is awkward. See y'all next time.
Later.
Later, dudes.
Wow.